Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Thursday, May 9th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today. We love our queen in her upright, especially because she's been popping up in a reverse over the last few days. We've got here our high priestess in their upright. A lot of that thinking with the headspace right now. A lot of that moving into the cerebral. Masculine and feminine will have a little bit of a different impact, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Feminine, one of the things that we're seeing that is happening right now, we saw that a lot of that energy over the eclipse cycle, doing that energetic deep diving, feeling that sense of affirmation, allowing a lot of that truth to embody in a lot of the path work that you're doing at this time. And for a lot of the feminine energy right now, a lot of this work is being amplified by not coming into a reactivity space, particularly around situations and circumstances that may have been having more of an impact on you in the past experience. What did we see is happening? Energy in the divine union frequency right now, pushing forward, pushing that energetic envelope, navigating into spaces and places that typically may have been triggering for you, that may have been insecure for you, allowing that modality of pushing forward, not in a way of coming out of alignment with oneself, but coming into better alignment with one's highest version of self. This is how a lot of the feminine energy right now is navigating that work. It is feeling very much like coming into alignment with one's highest version of self. And one of the things that we see is that can sometimes feel like that sense of coming into more of that logic brain mentality, coming more into that like high-mindedness, if you will. So for a lot of the energy right now, particularly in the divine union frequency, that moment of not feeling that energetic reactivity, feeling the full expansion of what you are feeling, but not feeling, again, not acting or reacting from the emotional centers of something. You know, almost that ability to see something. What happens in those moments that we can feel something, but not allow the overwhelm of the energetic expression of it to hinder our ability to face it? That is that moment that we almost feel like we can build that sense of clarity and purpose in looking at something with a different energetic perspective. So this is a lot more of that benchmark of success for feminine energy that has been moving forward out of their energetic comfort zone, both across all of the frequencies. For the energy in the divine union frequency and the energy in separation, this is going to feel very similar, right? This is going to feel very similar because these energies are moving in the same way. They are energetically pushing themselves out of their own comfort zone, but they're feeling the reward of experiencing that difference in energetic perspective as they do so. For energy in the divine union frequency, this is navigating through long-held anxieties, long-held fears, right? That's the feminine energy, confronting those insecurities within the self and having that internal personal breakthrough. While for the energy in separation, this is moving towards, we see that a lot of this energy in separation is building new bridges, articulating and speaking on past experiences. What happens in that moment that we find that we're able to talk about something that occurred in the past that used to create that sense of overwhelm in us? That's that moment that even as we experience it and we build those new energetic connections, we feel like we're having that energetic breakthrough point, because that's that moment that the feminine almost realizes as they articulate and almost says like, it doesn't have that much of an emotional effect on me anymore. It doesn't feel, and this is the feminine that says, it's not that I don't energetically still feel something. It's not that I don't still energetically hold space for it, but I've moved it into a place within myself that I'm able to see it more clearly. I'm able to articulate upon it. And so we see even now that for a lot of the feminine energy and separation doing this, that creates that clarity point, even in the moment of energetically expressing it. Now, the energy coming into divine union right now is the only energy that's a little bit of an outlier here. Because the energy coming into the divine union frequency right now, you are experiencing that change in perspective because you are coming into the divine union frequency. And for a lot of the energy coming into the divine union frequency, experiencing something being held in a way that you haven't had it held before can effectively or energetically immediately create that breakthrough point, because it's almost that moment, right? If you were looking at everything like this and being like, why is everything like this? The minute you go like this, you're like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like, it suddenly creates that sense of energetic clarity to a certain extent. So that may feel like it's happening more on an external level in terms of what the feminine energy is receiving and how they're able to perceive the past with the optics of the present. Masculine energy in this modality right now, this is also having a really profound impact on you as well. Because if this is masculine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, that's just building into that sense of energetic security, this is a lot of the masculine energy coming into that softness, coming into that vulnerability space. This is a lot of the masculine energy doing the same work as the feminine, but it's not requiring that sense of energetic resilience so much as it's creating that feeling of taking down those walls of the ego. So for a lot of the masculine energy doing that, what does the masculine feel in those moments that they become more and more energetically soft to the feminine? Those moments that the masculine comes softer to the feminine, but the feminine does not also become soft. The feminine is almost able to hold space for the masculine, almost showing the masculine energy that their own sense of compassion and care does not require them to be energetically strong at every point. That is the masculine that starts to feel energetically held by the feminine, because that is the masculine that feels like that is the feminine energy that says it is energetically safe. I am going to energetically protect you when you're in those moments of vulnerability. This is a place that you can be your most vulnerable self. So for the masculine, that's that moment of feeling that amplification in relationality to being able to come into a softer version of yourself, not for the feminine energy, but feeling the sense and the strength of having that type of energetic signature next to you as you do so. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, same exact expression. If this is a masculine energy that was holding those insecurities, right? Not coming into that reactive space, but almost coming into that point of being able to be open and honest to the feminine, but almost that feminine energy that doesn't force you to heal something that you're not ready to heal, almost leaves that door open, leaves that possibility of saying, when you're ready to navigate something, know that I am here. That is also the masculine that starts to feel energetically safe with the feminine, because that's not the feminine trying to force their experience or force their particular brand of healing on the masculine. That's almost the feminine saying, when you're energetically ready, I'm ready to confront those things with you. And so even then, that's a masculine also getting that shift of perspective, also feeling that perceptive shift that helps them articulate and see something from the past with better clarity. Masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. This is a lot of the masculine energy feeling that sense, if this is feminine energy that's able to talk about experiences from the past with a sense of clarity, with a sense of observation, with a sense of energetic logic, not from a point of not having felt something, but being able to almost assess and introspect on their own energetic feelings. That is a masculine that, again, feels like that sense of energetic safety, because that's the masculine that almost says, this is an expression of feminine that is able to navigate truth, that is able to navigate honesty. What is masculine healing trying to do right now? They're pushing their own envelope to be authentic, to be vulnerable towards feminine. And that ability of seeing a feminine that can navigate forward in that way builds that sense of strength towards a masculine that is seeking that. So across these frequencies, a lot of alignment today. Second card in our 5-card spread for today, we've got here our Knight of Swords in its upright. Masculine and feminine energy right now. I gotta tell you, there's a lot of new energetic connections that are happening right now in separation. There's an eagerness. There's a giddiness that's here. And it's funny because this Taurus energy is pulling everybody back a little bit. It's like, it's not the pulling back that we saw during the Mercury retrograde period, because the Mercury retrograde period is more of that, like, it's more of that energy of like really like kind of forcing you to face things that are hard to face. This is more of that like energy of Taurus, like wanting to take something slow and steady, wanting to put that process into play. But even now we see that for a lot of the energy that's coming into these new connection points during this season, it can feel very energetically frustrating to a certain extent, because you're trying to stop yourself from getting ahead of yourself, right? And we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, if this is moments or modalities wherein you're having that type of energetic connection with feminine, you're feeling that type of ability of the feminine. You're recognizing the feminine energy that's done that type of work, that's able to articulate from a place of understanding their own needs and being able to like be very open and honest towards you. That creates that sense of energetic eagerness in the masculine, because that's almost the masculine like moving forward and being like, I found what I'm looking for. I know what it is that I'm seeking. It's almost like that pathwork of purpose like coming through very quickly right now. And so for a lot of the masculine energy, one of the only things that we're seeing here is that for a lot of the masculine energy in separation, that may be leading you to like wanting to rush forward even faster right now. Well, what's happening for feminine energy? What happens when masculine and feminine energy start to get closer to their manifestation goals? Masculine starts moving a lot faster. There's that desire to move fast. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Feminine starts moving slower. Starts moving slower, right? Because that's just the way that these energies navigate forward when they hit these moments that they see energetically what they're moving towards, right? I always like, you guys know, I describe it with the egg test. Like if you're trying to like carry an egg across the finish line, do you rush it forward or do you move very methodically? So we see even now for energy and separation, there could be a little bit of that feeling. Masculine, like really wanting to like activate right now. Feminine wanting to take a little bit more of a slow approach. Now for energy in the divine, coming into the divine union frequency, this is that feeling of what occurs having that shift in perception. And that's why I said even now, the only thing to be a little bit mindful about this here is, again, feminine energy coming into the divine union frequency. This is that moment that almost like having that shift in perception, receiving something and seeing something in a way that you haven't, immediately creates that sense of energetic clarity, right? For a lot of the feminine energy, that can almost feel like a lot of catharsis coming through right now around circumstances or situations as you experience or you feel that sense of energetic alignment. While for masculine energy right now, one of the only challenging spaces that we see is for masculine energy, that almost builds that sense of energetic protectiveness around the feminine energy that you've navigate and you feel this with. So we see even now these energies coming into divine union, like that moment or modality. It feels a lot like that sense of like building the nucleus of something, like really coming together. And what's beautiful about these energetic frequencies is it doesn't feel to a certain extent like they need to move in the same exact way. This is that counterpart energy, right? Doing the same thing in different ways is what we identify as counterpart energy. It doesn't mean that you're trying to move oppositionally, right? It means that you're trying to do the same thing, but you've got different ways of going about it. And as a result, it creates different expressions, right? Masculine, a lot more of that activation energy. Feminine, a lot more of that energetic steadiness today. While for energy at the heart of the divine union frequency, this ability to navigate forward right now, to experience or unpack things that you feel that you may have felt those energetic triggers around, even things that you've been carrying for a long time. Because I keep getting this message that there's been a lot of like letting go of old traumas, of old doubts, of old fears. That creates different moments in masculine and feminine. The point of identifying something is coming through with the feminine, being able to experience something and not feel emotionally triggered by it. That clear thinking on something that may have felt like it had a little bit of too much of an emotional grip on you, right? For masculine, that ability, what happens when there was something that you were experiencing or carrying within you that would create a reactivity point? It's not that you can't activate upon it. It means now it almost feels like you activating upon it feels more intentional, right? You can move forward in a way that you know you're not being reactive. This is almost being able to feel like that sense of coming into alignment with one's highest intention or highest version of self, because that's that moment that immediately creates the empowerment for the masculine, because that's that moment that it's like the masculine moving forward in this way. They recognize that it's not coming from a place of fear or anxiety or insecurity. It's coming with a lot of intentionality and intent of purpose. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our 7 of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is in the heart of the divine union frequency. That feeling, it allows for that moment of new energetic opportunity. It opens the doors, if you will. When you're able to navigate forward, confronting what may have felt like it was inconfrontable for, navigating something that was a previous insecurity, experiencing something that may have brought up the shadow self, the doubts, the fears, the anxieties, but instead being able to energetically face it in such a way. That is that moment that almost allows one to move forward with an intentionality of purpose that allows for that energetic breakthrough. So we see even now, like that's that moment. This is feeling like a lot of that energetic equivalent of feeling the security in terms of a lot of that path work that you're doing right now that is allowing for a lot of intentionality to come in. While for the energy right now, as I mentioned, that's coming into divine union, the ability of someone to energetically hold a wound that you recognize and identify that they did not create, but that they're just recognizing and they're able to observe from a place of empathy, and even energetically holding it in a way, not the way that they would typically facilitate navigating it, but in the way that you yourself would aspire and desire it to be held. That is the feeling of energetic compassion and trust that is entering into these energetic cycles to a certain degree, that is almost reaffirming the commitment energetically of these energies to one another. It's almost like in that moment, it's like a reaffirmation of the energetic counterpart, because that's that moment that almost says you're able to do that. And it almost immediately creates a healing moment in the possibility of being able to release something. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, this is a lot of energy that's in separation, making new energetic connections at this time. Be them healing, be them new romantic connections, be them new friendships. A lot of alignment happening even in the separation frequencies right now, because these are energies. It's not that they're exactly the same, but their perspective is the same. They've experienced things from the same perspective. Maybe not having experienced something not experiencing the exact same thing, but their perspective, what they took away from something, is clear enough and matches enough that it allows that path work of energetic healing. And so for some of the masculine energy, this is why we see that there is some healing, there is some restoration energy occurring, because as I said, what happens when you change your priorities? You change your energetic perspective, which means your perspective might match someone who you could not necessarily energetically match with in the past, right? That's why we see that there is that modality here of some expressions of this coming into recovery. But that moment is amplified. I have to stress this again. These aren't energies that are just getting back together and picking up where they left off. These are moments or modalities where someone has gone through a deep energetic shift. Their priorities, their purpose has recalibrated to such an extent that it allows for that sense of wanting the same priority, even if you have different ways of going about it. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here the Sun card in its reversal, right? And what happens in these moments? It's not that these energies in separation that are making these new energetic connections. It's not like a, I want to say, it's not that sense of like, woo! It's not that like it's not that super exciting, happy energy, because these are energies that are encountering one another on the healing journey, right? These are energies, we just said, some of this masculine energy and separation, going through a lot of heavy, dark night of the soul work, confronting spaces and places of energetic regret. Regret's heavy stuff. Wisdom is heavy. Feminine energy going through these modalities of releasing energetic bitterness, right? That's a work in progress. Feminine's like got good days with that, got bad days, right? We see both of these energies doing a lot of that work. But even the way that you're navigating forward in such a way, even the ability to do so, do you see? It's not that these energies are focusing on the bitterness of the past or focusing on the regret space. These aren't energies that are like, I can't let go of this person who did this to me. I'm just going to be focused on them for, no, it's like, no, these energies are working in that same energetic perspective of saying like, yeah, there were difficult things that happened in the past, but they just made my intentionality all the clearer. I'm not allowing myself to hold on to regret. I'm moving forward. I'm not allowing myself to get held in that space of energetic bitterness. I'm moving forward. So you see even now that a lot of these energies that are having those new valuable connections, their perspective, not that everything's been perfect and then they're meeting each other in a place of perfection, but their own ability, their own tenacity, their own energetic resilience in saying, it's not the fact that something is energetically perfect, but I'm going to continue forward in that way. I'm going to let those serve as the energetic lesson. These are energies in healing, finding each other in that space of place of energetic healing, because they're taking those experiences and they're utilizing them with the same perspective of them serving as important, if not energetically heavy, valuable, energetic lessons. Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now. This is that moment. I need to say it again. I don't want anyone coming into divine union getting all self-righteous on yourself on the fact that you found like something that's perfect and everything else beyond that was just like bleh, because that's that moment of identifying that often when we come into the divine union frequency, we can cast a pretty sharp light on anything that wasn't within it. So we see even now some of the things that's happening here for a lot of that energy is feeling that stark contrast between what you're experiencing or how someone's holding something now that is shifting your perspective on something that you may have experienced in the past. I'm going to now say you're now having the lesson. Sometimes the lessons go this way, sometimes the lessons go that way. You recognize that you're now learning the lesson. You're working through the lesson that we just saw that the energy and separation was learning and working through 2 weeks ago. You're now working on the lesson of making sure that you're releasing energetic bitterness, feminine energy. Masculine, coming in the divine union frequency, letting go of energetic regret. You see now this one's coming up. This one's going from separation. It's going to make its way up to the energy in the divine union frequency, because that's why it's a frequency. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, this is that feeling that does feel like a point of energetic accomplishment for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, because it's not the fact that something that you're navigating here is energetically difficult. We see that a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency is pushing themselves into their own discomfort zones. But the ability to move into an energetic discomfort zone and not have it create that sense of internal reactivity within you, aided and abetted by the energetic counterpart energy that you're not leaning on to do so, but almost reaffirms your own energetic commitment in what you are doing. That is a lot of energy that's experiencing that sense of breakthrough in relationality to feeling that sense of not being energetically shaken, like almost being able to, like that feeling of not experiencing anything in those moments, and not the fact of not experiencing or feeling anything, but not having the reactivity point, like inspire that energetic or emotional reactiviness or reaction, creates the opportunity of intentionality to enter spaces and places that you may have tried to have to energetically avoid in the past. continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here our Page of Cups, and it's upright. So we got this is a little bit of that, like, again, what's happening for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now. There's that feeling, if you're confronting something, right? If you're facing something within the self that previously created a reactivity point in you, but with the energy of the counterpart that, is the exception to the rule, that helps you face things in a way that, like, you couldn't face them around, like via your own self. Like, that does create that moment of positivity. But I gotta stress, this isn't energy that's like, yay, because, like, this is hard work. Like, this is hard work. It's still something, like, you see, it's still not easy, right? It's still not easy to face. These aren't positive things. So it's not like, yay, but it's also like, it's like a little yay. It's like a little bit of happiness here, because it's like the expression of relief. Like that moment of saying it, like, something that hurts doesn't hurt as much anymore. Something I couldn't face, it's not that I can't face it anymore. I can face it a little bit better. I told you that incremental path work is that moment of success, because it feels like it's a little bit of that glacier effect, and saying, like, slow and steady, like that Taurus energy that we're experiencing right now. While for the energy right now coming into divine union, I'm going to say you're working through the same energetic lesson that the energy 2 weeks ago was doing in separation, right? It's like a harp. So it's like, now you're dealing with the moment that if you're coming into a space or place where you had these reactivity moments, but instead of it creating those separation points, instead of them creating that reactivity moment, instead of creating like those points that, like, everything fell apart, that was the moment that everything became held together. Like that thing that may have created that wound in the past and been like, when that happened, when I did this, when I said this, everything energetically fell apart. Suddenly having that moment and being like, that was that same moment being expressed, and not having that. Almost a lot of that energy saying, that was the moment I knew. Like, that was the moment I really knew, because that's the energy that says, that's the moment that they saw my insecurity. They saw my vulnerability. They saw my weakness. And it didn't move them further away from me. It became the tie that bound. And that moment, that experience, that energetic expression, if you will, that for a lot of energy, can sometimes bring up a lot of energetic emotions at that time, because what does it remind you of? The place or space where the insecurity or the wound that you're carrying, that someone else is holding for you, occurred in the first place. And that sense of experiencing something in a different way can change your own perspective on the energetic equivalent that potentially created or caused those wounds or insecurities in the first place. Which is why I'm going to say this again. For feminine energy, doing that work, coming into divine union, releasing any energetic bitterness that may be forming at the time that you experience that shift in perspective. For masculine, feeling that sense of releasing any of that energetic regret of the past, right? These are energies that are healing together. And sometimes that creates those moments when you have a breakthrough that can also amplify a lot of things coming up to the surface that you didn't necessarily recognize you were carrying, right? Because they almost rise up in the moment of clarity and perception. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, this is a lot of energy right now that is building new energetic connections, not because everything has been energetically perfect prior to this point, but because you're making the best out of difficult situations. You're refusing to let yourself, like, this is feminine energy coming into new connections with masculine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. And this is the energetic equivalent. Look, this is the energy saying to one another and seeing one another clearly, right? This is almost the feminine, like, looking towards masculine and being like, your ability to move forward in a space or place that you carry so much energetic regret is really admirable. And that's a masculine looking at feminine being like, well, that's what I got to do. The only way forward is forward, right? That's a masculine saying, I'm not going to let my regrets in the past hold me caught in the past. I'm going to move forward and let those serve as energetic lessons. While for masculine energy, looking at feminine and feminine articulating on some difficult situations, this is masculine almost saying to feminine, I feel like I would have gotten really energetically bitter if I'd had to navigate those. And that's the feminine energy in separation saying, what's the point of getting energetically bitter? If I got energetically bitter, I'd just be caught in the past. I'd just be focusing. Like me holding energetic bitterness is basically me articulating and saying, I can't let go of the past. And that's the feminine saying, I don't want the past to obfuscate my optics in the present. So we see that both of these energies encountering one another and saying like I recognize what you do. I recognize that it is a choice. I recognize that something that you say or make seem easy is incredibly difficult to do. So we see even now like a lot of that energy in separation coming into new energetic catharsis points, be they friends, new relationships, or new romantic connections, or even potentially some energetic healing if someone here has had a change of perspective that is allowing the breakthrough in terms of carrying something in the same way. Clarification coming through right now between our High Priestess in combination with our Knight of Swords. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now. Look at this beautiful energy. Tower card in its reversal. But that's what I mean right now. Did I just tell you what these energies are doing? Yeah. I've been going through it. The energy's going, yeah, I went through it. Poof. Like the energy's going like, yeah, I'm not going to let myself get caught in that moment. Right? These are the energies that say, it's not that something difficult didn't happen. I'm just not the type of person that lets myself get stuck in a space or place that was energetically difficult. I'm making the conscientious choice of moving forward. And these energies are amplifying and recognizing to one another how difficult that is. How easy it is to get lost in those moments that amplify those energetic points of crisis that then can become a breakthrough. Because these are the energies that articulate to one another and say, it's not that things don't go wrong. It's not that they don't go through moments where they wish that they had done something differently, but they move forward with an energetic commitment in making those moments valuable, making those moments matter, making those moments mean something through the actions of the present. So for feminine, that is releasing the grief, releasing the bitterness. Working on that is the healing journey. For masculine, it is not letting themselves get caught overwhelmed in regret, not letting themselves continually repeat the cycles of the past by replaying them out in the present. Both of these energies being energetically mindful in how they proceed forward and facing those moments, not to get caught in them, but to extract the important knowledge valuable to be able to make them have truly mattered. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, this is that moment that your perception on the past may be feeling like it is shifting at the time that you come into divine union frequency. Because that's that moment that you're like, wow, something that I thought was okay was not okay. Something that I was willing to accept was not something I should accept. Sometimes the only way we can see that is if we have the counterpoint to what we need to experience to have a point of comparison, right? So we see even now that for a lot of the energy moving through that, sometimes that means that you can cast a pretty sharp lens on the past in a way that may feel like it can overview those things to a certain extent. So we see even now that the ability of the energy coming into divine union to look back on the past with a sense of energetic compassion, either reminding themselves that it is hard to see things that you cannot see from the perspective that you're in, right? That even here we see that these energies understand and recognize that hindsight is 20/20 because hindsight is a little flawed. You cannot have the perception of the present in the context of experiencing something from the past. And it becomes all too easy for us to hold the past energetically accountable for what we can see clearly in the moment. So we see even now, like that ability of navigating with a little bit of energetic discernment in one's own, like, myopia, I will say, in recognizing the moment of seeing something in the way that you do, is also a lot of valuable path work for a lot of the energy coming into the divine union frequency right now. While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is that moment of finally being able to feel like you're ready to energetically confront or rectify something that you didn't feel like you were ready to in the past. The moment that you come into a space or state that you don't feel like you're energetically reactive. For feminine, it's not feeling overly emotionally overwhelmed in thinking or experiencing something. Being able to bring a level and degree of clarity and thought to it. For masculine, not feeling like you're running away from something. The minute you don't feel like the minute you heal that reactivity point that you're running away from something within you, immediately creates the opportunity of being able to run towards it. So we see even now that these energies are healing like on a deep quantum level by doing this internal energetic work. And that's being facilitated and activated in the presence via with the counterpart, but not by and for the counterpart. It's seeing the energy that is moving the same way as you that amplifies your own determination to do it. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Knight of Swords in combination with our Seven of Cups in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now. It's exhausting. It's hard work, but it's commitment. And this is the nice thing about this. For the energy in the divine union frequency, it's not, it reaffirms the path work. It reaffirms itself as you experience it, right? Because for a lot of the energy, this isn't new stuff. This isn't energy encountering something new. This is something that carrying something within them that they've been holding for a long time. And the ability to hold something in a different way is a reinvestment in something, right? So it's almost that moment that this is either energy that's like letting go of something, like letting go of an insecurity, letting go of a doubt, letting go of a fear, or reinvesting in something in a different way because you're now able to energetically face it. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into the divine union frequency, this is how you're energetically carrying something from the past. And this is, again, a lot of this process, I told you, is letting go, because it's not the fact that you're releasing the past, but you're looking at it from a different perspective, and you're doing a lot of work in energetic discernment, in relating, in feeling different feelings coming up because of that, and just letting them go. Like not letting any kind of expression in seeing something differently and whatever that's bringing up in you become the focal point, because that'll move you out of that'll have you over concentrating on the past, but just coming into that like that release energy in terms of seeing something, experiencing something, feeling. When you see something in a different way, you're going to feel it in a different way. So some of that may feel like that amplification point in working to let go of something again from the past, having now experienced it in a different way. Continuing to get clarification for the energy that is in separation right now. These are a lot of those new energetic connections that are happening. These are either path work. I told you, this is either path work of restoration or new energetic investment. Because this is either being able to move towards the new energetic counterpart energy that you are finding on the healing path. And the way that they're carrying something is similar, which is giving that moment of indication on someone that feels like they are in alignment with you. Or this is energy that is going back to past situations and circumstances, not just to reconnect to someone, but connecting in such a way of saying, I can bring something different to the experience. My perception has changed. My priorities have changed enough that now I feel like I can see something that will bring me into better alignment with someone that I was not able to see before. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Seven of Cups in its reversal and our Sun card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? clarification coming through right now. Beautiful energy here today. We've got here our 10 of Swords in its upright, right? It's not that everything is energetically perfect here, right? It's not that everything is energetically perfect here. It has everything to do with how you energetically choose to carry it, right? And we see even now that a lot of the beauty of a lot of these energetic connections that are happening right now in separation is the amplification of meeting someone and feeling the alignment of someone who carries it the same way that you carry it, right? And that's not that moment that we see that feels like the amplification of everything being sunshine and rainbows. Like, this is a lot of energy that's like walking like right down the middle here. Because we've got here a lot of the energy being like, it's not that everything is sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not that everything is like awful. It is doing the best with one can with what you experience. It is being able to facilitate that to a certain extent. It is the amplification of making that intentional choice, right? And that ability of the energy on that healing frequency saying, I recognize every day that there's a million different ways I can choose. This is the energy that is encountering each other in separation right now. Like the idea of waking up every day, not knowing what you're going to face, right? You can't necessarily predicate on what you're going to experience every day, but you can be very intentional on how you choose to navigate it, how you choose to energetically carry it. And what we see that is really beautiful for a lot of the energy right now in separation is navigating and building these connections and saying, how do you navigate those spaces? How do you build forward in that way? How do you address those things? Do we match in terms of how we energetically choose to carry something? And that ability to do so right now, that is literally the attunement. This is energy in separation that is doing that heartfelt work of not just trying to get with someone, but trying to really say, are we in alignment? Like, are we in attunement? Like, are we attuned to each other? Do we follow that same, do we match that same energetic vibration? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into the divine union frequency, this is feeling a further amplification of that energetic attunement, right? Because it's not that you guys are energetically perfect here. It's not that everybody, like, these are counterpart energies. They do things in different ways, right? So it's not the fact that you do the same thing. The energy coming into divine union is feeling that additional sense of building upon intimacy. That is the articulation point, not just in appreciating and valuing someone because of the energetic choices that they express, but also via the way that they are able to be energetically mindful of how the counterpart may choose to address and express something. That sense of energetic foresight that we create when we're able to hold not just the energetic space of our own self, but also the mindfulness energetically of how the counterpart may vary, may deviate, right? That almost builds that energetic connection point because these are energies that are building into that attunement even more in recognizing and seeing that sense of mindfulness via the counterpart energy. While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot of the energy that is in that modality right now that's doing that work through the self. Feeling the sense of support, feeling that sense. These are not energies that are leaning on each other. They are going forward on their own healing journeys within, and they're being able to confront things that they weren't able to necessarily confront in the past, not with the counterpart. And that's not due to the fact that the counterpart is facilitating that type of energetic work. It is feeling the security and strength of an energy that is moving in the same way, doing the same work, that is building that sense of affirmation, even if that work is different. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Sun card in its reversal, in combination with our Page of Cups in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. This is how we heal these energetic connections. And this is what is happening right now. I'm telling you right now, this is a lot of unpacking of potential family trauma here. This is a lot, for a lot of the energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency. A lot of that is like, I told you, this is some heavy work. This is beyond, I'm going to say right now, this is beyond like the energetic equivalent of like, I want to say this, like, this is beyond the energetic equivalent of like tertiary relationships, of like if there were situations here of like repeating cycles that someone was navigating through. This is a lot of the energy that's in the heart of the divine union frequency, so it's saying like deeper, 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 deeper. Where did it start? Where did it start? Where did it start? Right? Because this is the energy that isn't satisfying themselves with like a fast answer. This is not the energy, right? This is like the energy that's almost like saying the divine union frequency. Like if you're going to go to the trouble of ripping off the Band-Aid, you're going to make sure that you're going to like clean the wound to its source. You're going to get down to it, right? Because we see even now, like this is that type of unpacking, especially if this is coming out in some kind of expression of someone, of a tendency, of a habit that someone has been energetically carrying that they're not a fan of. Like this is energy being like, I see this in myself, and I hope that isn't something like this is the energy that's not satisfied with like, oh, that's weird. Like this is not the energy that's satisfied like that. This is the energy that says, I want to get down to the heart of something. I want to understand that deeper implication. I want to recognize where that began. Because this is the energy that's trying to come into alignment with their higher version of self. And an energy that's coming into alignment with a higher version of self isn't going to look at something and say, like, that's a habit of mine. I should stop doing that. That's the energy that realizes and recognizes and says, why do I have that habit? Why do I do that? When did I start doing that? And that's that moment that's now allowing for that deeper work, especially if these energies are doing this work on the self, that they're able to face things from their own past experience that used to be triggering or used to bring about these non-positive habits in the first place, right? Like this is a lot of that, like, building that energetic, like doing that work to rebuild a lot of that energetic tissue in terms of like recognizing and identifying. And this is the energy I told you, not just doing it for the sake of the self, doing it and being very energetically mindful of the energy around you in the process, right? This is energy that's doing so. And this is that moment, same that we saw yesterday. Being like, this is bigger than me. I don't just do this for myself. I do it for the best interest of all of the energy around me. Because that's the hope that the energy has, that like everyone will also be doing this work. Unfortunately, like a lot of that sometimes feels like it's limited when you're not recognizing others that facilitate in that way. While we see even now for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union frequency, this is having a little bit of that like stark contrast in looking at something in a different way, because you're feeling the power and the weight of a good energetic connection, right? And it's like the minute you start building into that positive energetic connection, it can be like you can cast like a kind of a stark light on things that you may have not looked at with like a level, or like you may have like kind of shrugged off. Like suddenly that thing you shrugged off feels like it takes more of a heavy impact energetically, right? Because that's that moment of looking at something. I told you a lot of this energy coming into divine union was like, I didn't even realize I was healing from that. I didn't even realize there was an alternative to that. And that's that moment that like something that you felt like it's almost that moment that you're like, that's really funny. Oh, it's not funny anymore. Right? You know what I mean? Like it's that moment that almost comes through like something that like, that funniness starts to feel like, it almost feels like it starts to carry grief, because you're seeing it in a way that like your own perception and clarity is being amplified by the energetic connection around you. Remember, a lot of that Like a lot of that energy coming into divine union right now is almost starting or leading with those questions. Like if this is masculine seeing the insecurities of the feminine, masculine saying to feminine, who told you that's something that you should be insecure about? Right? And this is the feminine almost looking to the masculine, if the masculine's feeling those insecurities, and said, who told you you should be ashamed to talk about that? Right? And that's that moment that like starts to feel like, again, the activation in the healing comes from the healthy energetic connection. And it starts with, like, again, that ability of holding space for another's anxieties and fears, but with a sense and space of energetic compassion. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation right now, this is the exact same kind of energetic equivalent right now, because these are energies that are building bridges. They're building new energetic connections right now, looking towards being able, it's actually a little bit of the opposite, being able to talk about something that used to be energetically devastating, something that was like almost too difficult to discuss. What happens in that moment that something that you were not able to discuss becomes something that you can discuss? It's a moment that you recognize, I can discuss it because I'm no longer experiencing it. Like it's already outside of the self. I'm able to articulate upon it because I've removed myself from it. So we see even now for a lot of that energy, that ability of taking something that felt like it was devastating and almost being able to talk about it in a way that feels like it's energetically lighter. That's that moment that you almost immediately start to feel that energetic healing, because that's that moment that you feel like it's safe enough to be able to talk about something in a way that you know it doesn't energetically overwhelm you. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Tower card in its reversal and our Ace of Pentacles in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Two of Pentacles in its reversal. And this is really, really beautiful energy right now, particularly for a lot of the energy in separation. This is a lot of affirmation and commitment to the path work. This is a lot of energy right now that, like, it's not the fact, I need to stress this, it's not the fact that there isn't still those thoughts about the past here. It's not the fact that you're not still considering those moments, but it's becoming energetically easier. You see how that ratio is changing? You're staying more grounded in the present. And if you're staying more grounded in the present and it's becoming easier and easier to look at something from the past, that's almost that moment that almost reaffirms and invests in the commitment energetically in what you're going forward with right now. So either that is, again, being expressed in the new energetic connections that are being made at this time that show that similaritude in perceiving something in the same way, or this is someone that is going back to a situation or circumstance saying, my perspective on what occurred has shifted and has to such a degree that I'm moving in a different way, that I've already put these energetic changes into practice, that this is something that, like, I'm not just changing my perspective for you, because we can't change our perspective for anyone, but this is energy that just says, I have truly energetically changed, and that is why I'm returning back to something. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, this modality of experiencing and receiving something, what happens in the moment that you receive something that you haven't received, or something is held in the way that something hasn't been held before? A lot of this energy is recovering from the fact that they didn't realize that there was something that they were energetically recovering from. A lot of this energy is now going through the act of recovery, feeling like they are recovering from something that they didn't even realize that they were recovering from. Right? Because that's that moment that you only have that sense of insight at the moment that you experience something that is counterbalanced to what you've been experiencing. So for a lot of the energy right now, that can be that moment that, like, amplifies that feeling of, like, breakthrough, but it can feel a little, like, shaky at the same time, because you're like, I didn't even see that. You know what I mean? While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot of that work in recognizing and identifying and feeling like you are doing that internal work on the self to such a degree that you're integrating yourself. This is a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency that is like integrating their shadow. Like there's a lot of this work right now. Like that a lot of that work, and it's really beautiful because we see even now, like that's the energy that's like looking at something that you held shame with and like just allowing yourself to energetically face it, looking at something that you are afraid of within the self and being able to energetically face it. And what happens in those moments when we're able to confront those parts of ourselves that we typically would shy away from? Integration. Whole, like making ourselves energetically whole by facing those parts of the self that we are often so eager or willing to like energetically avoid, right? That's that moment of, again, facing oneself, but facing oneself in a way of allowing that to be a moment of not pushing a part of the self away and saying, I just can't look at that. I can't experience that. I can't think about that. Saying coming into that point, saying, accepting all aspects of the self that allows for that feeling of energetic breakthrough and whole and being made whole. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Ace of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Ten of Swords in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Judgment card. I'm not surprised to see these cards right now because what we're seeing and experiencing, what happens at those moments that we're able to make ourselves energetically whole. That's that moment that we, again, we maintain a point of energetic judgment on ourselves, okay? But again, that is that moment that we readdress ourselves in a way of letting ourselves face ourselves, like in our wholest mentality, and saying, I see myself, I recognize myself, I embrace myself. And that's that moment that, again, if there's a part of the self that you find is energetically lacking, that doesn't become a moment of holding energetic shame to it. It becomes the energetic standard. Do you see now how the energy and separation, the lesson that was happening for the energy and separation, is now making its way up to the energy that was in the divine union frequency? Just go check out the readings from 2 weeks ago. These energies, these frequencies communicate with each other. So this is that moment of having that point of assessing and addressing, and almost that sense of the energy in the divine union frequency saying, if there's something within that I cannot face, I need to face it, because I need to look at it and say, why am I casting judgment upon that part of myself? You see how this work starts to happen? You see where these like gears start turning? Because that's that moment of looking and having that like chicken or egg moment and saying, is that the energetic standard I'm holding myself to, or is that some piece of shame that I'm carrying from something else? Right? That moment of observing that. And even now, a lot of that energy confronting those moments is requiring what is required in those moments when we look at something and say, is this a standard that I hold, or is this shame or insecurity I carry? You have to know yourself. You got to know who you are to be able to make that determination point. So we see that a lot of this energy is continuing to find themselves in that act of discovery through facing that moment within the self and reaffirming their own commitment to who they are and that highest version of self. Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, this is the energetic equivalent of potentially, this is more of an external process. This is more of an external process. This is more of that process that we see that is occurring around the ability of seeing something from a different perspective, coming into the divine union frequency that suddenly feels like a breakthrough, but creates a lot more judgment on anything that previously created before, because that's that moment that you have a breakthrough and you're like, it's not like you just throw away the book of the past. You're like, I got to like open the book back up and I need to assess and analyze what occurred, because now my judgment, my perception on something is different than it was at the time of energetically experiencing it. That's the judgment point in terms of identifying and bringing something back from the past that occurs as you come into the divine union frequency. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation. That is that work of potentially what is happening. These energies are building new bridges in the present by bringing up the past. These are energies that are bringing up the past and they're articulating on them. A lot of new energies right now. This is not energy that's making new connections and being like, I don't want to talk about what happened. Don't talk about this. I don't want to talk about what happened. No, this is the energy that's like, it's hard for me to talk about it, but I'd like to. It's not easy for me, but I'm going to. Because this is the energy I told you that's challenging. They're pushing their own envelopes in making these new energetic connections. So what's the feminine energy doing? Feminine energy is utilizing resiliency in doing that work, saying it's not easy, that's why I'm going to do it. Masculine energy is saying it's really hard for me to be vulnerable about this, but I'm going to do it. Because both of these energies are being mindful in not repeating the lessons of the past. And for feminine, that's a feminine saying, I need to be strong about what it is that I'm energetically seeking. Masculine saying, I need to be vulnerable enough to tell the feminine energy what I'm energetically seeking. Both of these energies are doing that activation work, and it feels hard because there's a lot of judgment there. Like what happens? Like what's the anxiety and fear of the feminine saying, what if I tell the masculine energy what I want? What if I let them see who I am and they don't like it? That's the feminine saying to themselves like, yeah, they'll judge me. But that's the feminine energy almost saying it's not energetic judgment. It's moving me away from something that they would always feel that way. That's the feminine energy saying when I'm not my authentic version of self, and I become more adaptable for who I want masculine to be. That's the feminine almost remembering and saying, it's not that part of me goes away. It just means I am foregoing the inevitable conclusion of the day that they discover and understand like who I actually am, right? So even now, that's a feminine energy that almost says like, I'm not going to let that be a foregone conclusion. I'm just going to let that happen sooner rather than later. That is the Band-Aid rip moment. While for masculine, this is the same energetic equivalent, which is masculine saying, if I am not authentic with the feminine, if I don't reveal to the feminine my feelings, my hopes, my dreams now, then we may steer off course. Then I may discover that they don't want the same things I want. Then we might go into that moment where I feel like I'm building a wall of illusion around them, or I'm not able, I live and inhabit the space or place of, because I was too energetically afraid to like carve out what that space was in the moment of like truly making an energetic connection. So we see even now both of these energies saying, yeah, I face energetic judgment when I do so. But that ability to do so is almost that moment of welcoming. That's a moment that you welcome that point of judgment, because that's a moment that you say, better now, better at the beginning of the moment of meeting and encountering one for the first time, that we recognize that, than to have that occur invariably at some point down the line where emotions, feelings, passion becomes involved, right? So we see even now a lot of that work occurring here. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 10 of Swords in its reversal in combination with our 6 of Cups. 2 cards coming out to clarify. 3 cards coming out to clarify. Just want to pull them all out today, huh? Okay, it's fine. We got 3 cards popping out. So this is a big thing. This is a lot of like opening up the box to a certain extent here. Because one of the things that we're seeing right now, like look at this energy and separation. This is hard work. This is energy and separation, doing the hard part first. And if this is energy that's coming into like healing, this is like just going for it. This is energy that's not just like coming back into a space or place of like, I told you, if this is any energy of restoration, this is not energy that's just like, yeah, come on back, come on in. No, this is the energy that's like, there needs to be that value point in articulating and understanding what has changed, what one's priorities are. Because I told you, if these are pathworks right now of healing, this is that moment that we see that's almost that sense of like the energy coming back and saying like, not only do I prioritize something, but I'm willing to energetically fight for it. And what I mean by energetically fight for it, I mean that sense of saying, I'm willing to do the hard work, willing to do the hard work of the self, right? That's the energy that's almost, again, articulating that sense of saying, I'm willing to do the work within the self. I'm willing to like navigate those moments, pushing my own envelope, challenging myself because of the energetic connection. So we see either this is like, I have to stress this is like the only space or place where a lot of these like reconnection points are happening. That is that moment of energy that's done so much path work, that they've changed so much, that's something that they're not even doing for the sense or sake of another. This is almost energy that's communicating and saying, the desire to be with you may have launched me on that energetic journey, but I'm doing it now for myself. Like that's the energy saying, I do that for myself. That is the amplification of someone truly energetically changing. While we see that for a lot of the energy making those new energetic connections right now, this is the energy that again is very articulate on the experiences that they've been having. This is not energy that doesn't want to bring up the past. This is the energy that it feels like they're constantly inhabiting the past. They're constantly experiencing the past. They're constantly working through it, because this is energy that is almost like articulating that sense of the fact that like even being in separation is such that like it has been a path work of trying to come into alignment with the self to such a degree that it is amplified by the type of energetic signature that does not give up on things. Like this is energy that almost is articulating and saying, they're like telling each other the stories of how hard they tried to fix something, until finally coming into that modality of not feeling like there was anything else they could energetically do. Because this is a lot of energy that is focused. Their priority is building positive, productive, energetic connections around themselves. So a lot of energy and healing right now, building these pathworks of connection through those shared experiences. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, this is why I'm going to say this again, making sure that you're not taking on some of that bitterness or energetic regret of the past right now is so important. Because look at this energy. This is the energy that is experiencing like sublime connection. There's feeling that sense of alignment. And why is it that when you come into alignment, suddenly it feels like everything around you starts to feel like it's staticky? Right? Has everything just immediately changed? Like, has everything immediately changed in the minute that you came into connection? Or is it more likely, is it more possible that your perception of something feels different given where you are energetically? So I think for a lot of the energy experiencing that coming into divine union, remembering again, hindsight is 2020, but hindsight is also hindsight is also faulty. That is helping a lot of the energy navigate something about looking at the past and suddenly something that you experienced in a moment of feeling energetic connection, feeling like it's even more challenging than it was at the time that you experienced it. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, this modality, this experience, this work that you're doing within the self, confronting the parts of yourself that you typically would not confront, navigating the parts of yourself that you would typically try to avoid, coming into that point of like really saying like, I want to integrate all of those aspects of the self. That feels like it's challenging stuff, because again, there's that moment of looking towards within oneself and saying, what is there? Like, what is there that is foundational to who I am, and what is something that I'm hoping to release? And that ability of identifying that is the moment that like no one can tell you where those lines are, right? And that's why we see these energies are not leaning on each other to know what those are. They may move towards one another to help articulate help each other on that journey of the self. But that's that moment that almost feels that amplification point in recognizing that this is some of the path work that like no one else can do for us. No one else can dictate what it looks like. It must exist within, because it entirely is about who we are in relationality of like how we are experiencing things. And those standards, like that is that path work of looking at something and saying, this is how I choose to energetically carry this. This is, and as long as you're moving in that state or space of not feeling anything that feels like that insecurity or weakness around it, almost holding those moments, like in holding them from your chest, that is that moment that feels like the incorporation and integration of self, because that is the feeling of knowing oneself, feeling that energetic confidence in those spaces and places that you would typically previously may have felt those moments of anxiety and doubt and fear upon. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Two of Pentacles in its reversal and our Judgment card. One card to clarify, please. We've got here our Page of Swords in its upright. So for masculine and feminine energy, like in the heart of the divine union frequency, what happens in the moment that you're able to integrate the self? What happens in those moments that you're able to take those spaces of doubt and shame and fear and either release them because they're external from yourself or accept those points? That is that moment that what happens? Immediate energetic confidence, right? Immediate energetic confidence, because that's that moment that almost feels like that point of vitality, because that's that moment of saying like, I've already, like when you come into that point, you feel that sense. It's like you've judged your own self. And that's that moment that you feel like you're creating that sense of being energetically worthy in that modality of recognizing and saying you don't cast judgment out on those around you. You've already done that work within the self, right? And that ability of doing so, that ability of recognizing that work is that moment that you don't feel that necessity or you don't feel that anxiety and fear and others judging you because you know who you energetically are, right? That's what happens in those moments. So we see even now that ability of the energy in the divine union, at the heart of the divine union to do so, that creates that feeling of strength and in confidence and empowerment, because that's that moment that almost creates that point of being able to say like, I can speak who I am from my chest. Right? And that's that moment that the thing that you may have been carrying that feels like it was your, like that anxiety point or that doubt, you say, no, I've incorporated that. That's a part of me. I've already integrated that. Right? And that's when it feels like that sense that the thing that you feel is your weakness becomes your energetic strength. While for masculine and feminine energy, coming into the divine union frequency right now, this is that moment of, again, you're doing that. I need to stress this is the opposite because this is the energy where you're feeling something in such a way that it becomes very easy to cast energetic judgment on those around you, because now it's a moment that like you're seeing something from a new perspective. So suddenly your whole perspective shifts. So again, making sure that you're not casting judgment out on anything that happened previous to you entering the divine union frequency right now is very important, right? Because that's that moment that you have to look with a sense of grace and empathy on anything that you experienced prior to coming into the divine union, reminding yourself that all of that paved the way for you to be able to understand yourself enough that you were able to meet the energetic counterpart that allowed you to have that breakthrough in the first place. That's how a lot of this energy is releasing either that feeling of bitterness or any of those feelings of regret, that all of that, nothing there is wasted. That if everything led you to coming into divine union, all of it in a way, it's not that you would want something to energetically happen, but in a way, all of it was an energetic gift to a certain extent to help you recognize and identify that moment or point of being able to come into your true sense of self. So we see even now that a lot of that energy, doing that work to release that, not from a state of judgment, but from a state of appreciation and gratitude. Being able to have that immediate feeling and being like, but then being like, but also it's fine, right? Like that's that moment being like, it's not that I wanted something to happen, but I'm also okay and experience this because I understand like all of it helped create that moment of who I am today, right? Like that's that work that we do. So we see even now that a lot of that energy coming into divine union is wrestling with going back and forth between, like you see this, they're wrestling. Like this is wrestling with the angel. They're going back and forth between that modality of feeling the frustration of what they experienced that led to that point, while also feeling the energetic gift of being there, right? Like that is that moment that you go back and forth between those feelings of feeling okay, but then feeling frustrated. That's a part of it too. And it's okay for the energy to move back and forth in that, because that's a part of the healing process. So masculine and feminine energy in separation, this is a lot of that breakthrough work that we're energetically seeing to a certain extent in relationality to circumstances or experiences wherein you're kind of doing, you're having the same energetic connection moment. You're looking at something and being like, I didn't necessarily choose to have the things that happened to me occur. I couldn't have, like, that's that moment of a lot of this energy meeting one another and saying like, you know, wasn't energetically perfect. I do the best I can with what I energetically receive. And that ability, just the perspective of someone having that point, like looking at something and saying, having that mindfulness in the energetic choices, that in itself is building that sense of new energetic connection, because that's the energy that almost says like, I am very energetically mindful about how I carry something, is almost like someone like looking at the other and being like, you're very much like me. Right? So a lot of this energy, potentially feeling that excitement and moving into alignment right now, or just feeling that amplification of something now, because there's still a lot of the energy in separation is going through that same process of saying like, you know, it's not necessarily fair about how I have to carry something, but it's not my job for something to be fair. It's my job to make it as fair as possible. This is the energy that moves with intentionality. Like, right, like that's the energy that says like, I realize that that's a choice. I could either sit here, carry this and feel really bitter about it, or I could sit there and I carry this and choose to like make the best of it. And so we see even now that that energy is both doing that. Feminine's doing it more from a place of bitterness. Masculine's doing it more in a place of releasing energetic grief or regret. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Judgment card, there's a lot of cards here, our Seven of Wands, our Four of Swords, and our Ace of Swords in its reversal, okay? One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with Three of Wands in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy in separation right now. A lot of that path work that we see that is coming into play right now has to do with that energetic equivalent in relationality to feeling those experiences. And I just keep seeing this is beautiful, because this is a lot of energy that is coming into closure right now with anything in the past. And what's beautiful about this is it's not the fact that you're not looking back at the past, right? It's not the fact that we see here that this energy is refusing to look at something that is difficult. This is energy that is talking about it. Look at it. This is energy in separation that's articulating upon it, that is expanding and expounding upon it. But what are they affirming to themselves in the process? I don't want to go energetically back there. I don't want to go energetically back there, right? This isn't the energy that's encountering each other and talking about all of like the crisis point with a sense of like longing, being like, you know, wanting to go back to some kind of past situation or circumstance that caused all of that grief and problem. This is the energy that says, my affirmation in experiencing that is not wanting to return back to the places that created that type of energetic conflict. Because even now we see that a lot of these energies in separation, they're saying it wasn't all terrible, right? It wasn't all terrible. This is energy saying like, you know, it was exciting. It was like a lot of like back and forth. It was like, you know, volatile. But again, the energy is like, I left that. I moved away from something. I let it go. I don't want to go back there. All it requires is the affirmation and the commitment of saying, I don't want to return to a place of energetic conflict. I don't want to make the choices that result in the day-to-day environment being one that feels like it is energetically conflicting. That moment, that energy, affirming to one another, even in their path work forwards, is almost affirming and saying, my priority, like this is the energy in separation saying, my priority is not going back to the places and experiences that caused me energetic pain. And that's why we see even now that if there are energies here that are coming into restoration, this is not energy that's just like, hey, I miss you, let's get back together. This is energy that's saying, I have changed my life. I have worked through all of this. I've done so much work because I never want to have that occur again. And if this is energy that, again, is in that regret space, if they're holding themselves accountable for some of that chaotic energy, that's the energy that's almost saying, like, the affirmation going forward is never again. Never again will I stand in my way. Never again will I sabotage myself. That's the energy that's almost amplifying that through their activation points in the present, which again does not require someone to be energetically perfect at every moment. It is the affirmation in not returning to the past that builds the path of wisdom going forward. So we see even now, these are energies that are taking accountability for their own part in either creating some of that experience from the past that was chaotic or accepting it to a certain degree. And the affirmation going forward is that is the work that is being done, that is affirming an ability to talk about something that was difficult while affirming at the same time a desire not to reignite or re-experience it. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that change in perspective, that experience of showing each other an insecurity and wound, and instead of it be creating a reactive point, instead of it creating that sense of someone taking your wound personally or being angry or feeling that sense of reactivity, someone who just is able to say, thank you for telling me that. Thank you for showing me where I should not tread. Thank you for telling me of that experience that created that insecurity. I understand you don't want to talk about that whenever you're ready. That ability of someone holding your wounds with that compassion and love, it feels like that moment that's instantly something gets healed. But it also changes your optics in terms of what you experienced prior to that point, because it's almost that moment of being like, I didn't realize that option was on the table. Like that ability, it feels like that moment. And that's the energy that, again, that why is this energy releasing that feeling of bitterness or regret? Because that's the energy saying the same thing that they were affirming when they were in separation. I'm never going back there. I understand. Every time I move forward, I understand more of the reason why I would never go back there energetically. Like it's never that moment, even when it feels like it's triggering. It's like that moment of being like it's like even that change of perception, while it may feel like it's painful, it may reopen wounds to a certain extent, it doesn't return you back there. It reaffirms your own commitment in relationality to where you are, but making sure that it doesn't change or skew your perception. Like that is really important, because sometimes it can be like, sometimes that change of perspective can like be a little, I told you, myopic in relationality to seeing something in a way that almost like overly caricaturizes some of those experiences in the past that didn't feel like they were in alignment. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot of that work that we see is occurring in relationality to being able to overcome any hurdles within the self. Why are these energies pushing so hard into their own insecurities? Because the only way out is through. The only way to come into a higher alignment with the self is to confront those parts of the self that you find most shame or most fear on. That active integration in terms of becoming whole needs to come into a point of acceptance and appreciation of all aspects of the self. And that doesn't mean allowing oneself to like move into your like base like feeling. It amplifies the fact that you can experience everything that you're experiencing. And what happens in the moment that we experience everything that we're experiencing within the self, and we're not reactive? We are constantly moving in intentionality, because we're moving not from a state of reactivity. We're moving every moment with a moment of intentionality of who we aspire to be. And the ability we do that, and the more that we understand ourselves, the more that we know ourselves, the more intentional we can be on that journey. Because we're not doing that because of ignorance of the self. We're doing that with full knowledge of the self that allows us to have that level and degree of intentionality. Continuing, final cards for today's spread are between our Page of Swords in combination with our Three of Wands in its reversal. Final card for today's spread. I love today's deck. Oh man, I'm going to glue these down, man. We got our Nine of Swords in its reversal. What happens in that moment? What happens in that moment with the self when we turn our attention to the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see? When we turn our attention to the parts of ourselves that we try to avoid? When we turn our attention to those aspects of the self that we go like this on? That's the moment we look and say, you're a part of me too. I accept you. I accept all parts of myself. And that, even the parts, look, this is not the energy that says that they're moving towards those. They say, I accept even the places and spaces of myself that I don't see or understand fully. And that ability to even see that immediately creates that wash of healing, like on a deep level, because that's that moment of saying, even in your failure points, even in those doubts, even in those insecurities, you are perfect. You are perfect because you have them. Because even in those places that you are not perfect, you can make the choice to be as perfect as possible. The fact that there is a choice even in those moments makes you more perfect, because you can see those parts of yourself and you choose to move in navigation with who you aspire and desire to be. So we see even now a lot of that energy going on that journey to confront those parts of themselves that are hard to see, all for the sake of integrating and healing them to an even greater degree. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, you're experiencing that on the external part. What happens when we're in that modality of someone seeing our insecurities, seeing our weaknesses, seeing those places and spaces that we do best for others to avoid, and instead of them creating that reactivity, instead of them creating that doubt, instead of creating that argument, instead of having those moments saying, I think you're more beautiful there. I don't see anything there that isn't perfect. I see parts of yourself that you don't like. I see some walls that you've thrown up around some things that you're worried about confronting. But that's that moment of seeing and having those points and looking at someone and saying, even in your insecurities, I see even more perfection. That is that moment that immediately creates that sense of energetic healing, because that's that moment of feeling that true compassionate energy in the counterpart. That's like that moment of saying, I accept you, even in those places and spaces that you don't accept yourself. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, these are those energies that are building that like bridge of catharsis. It's not a fun bridge. It's not a fun bridge to have to sit there and talk about like what became that thing that didn't allow you to build that bridge. You know, this is a lot of the energy that's almost saying like, I see, like, this is the energy that says I've come far enough that I can see enough that I see my own self in this. I see what was mine to carry. I see what I allowed to accept it. I see what was something that I experienced that wasn't energetically fair. And the energy that's meeting each other in this modality is the energy that says, you know, it's not that everything's energetically perfect, but I'm going to continue forward in that way regardless. Like, that's the energy that feels like they're meeting someone whose perspective, the perspective on where their direction is. This is the energy. What's the perspective saying? I'm not going back. This is literally the energy moving right now in separation that's building forward on the manifestation goals, moving forward with the core affirmation being, I'm not going back. And I need to know where I'm keeping my focus on what I want, and I'm not going back the way I was. And even in the pathwork of restoration, this is energy saying, if I'm coming back, we're not going back there. because this is the energy that says I'm affirming to like create that correction point. So we see even now that moment of catharsis and a lot of this energy, feeling that sense of energetic excitement potentially arising, because this is energy that, like, you know, even in these new connections, something about the perception feels like it's in alignment. Bottom of the deck on these reading right now, 3 of Pentacles in its reversal. I told you, everybody's doing new stuff. Everybody's doing new stuff. When you're doing new stuff, it can feel very unstable because you don't have anything that you can look at the past to set the energetic template, right? Like, that's the problem. When you're doing something in a new way, it's like you don't have the blueprint. You can't look at something and say, like, we should do it like this, because like a lot of the energy here is looking, being like, not doing like that again. No, you know what I mean? Like, and so that's that moment that, again, it can feel anxiety inducing. It can feel uncertain, but it can also feel very energetically exciting, right? That's the difference between like looking at a moment when you see everything is a mess and you either see like a demolition zone or you see a construction area. Like, is that moment? How do you carry it? Are you looking around you and you're saying like everything is a mess, or everything is an opportunity to build upon? So a lot of this right now, that ability of maintaining that perspective across all of these frequencies is really key, because there is that sense of like not necessarily knowing like what's ahead or what you're doing, but your own ability of carrying it in such a way that you can face those not with fear and trepidation, but with excitement, intention, opportunity. Like, that is what is allowing a lot of that energetic shift forward at this time. Bottom of, I want to thank you. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber ID at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website, so I encourage you to do it there. Also, just a quick update for anyone who's joining us for the first time. We have our next tarot class on Wednesday, May 15th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be proceeding forward on our tarot journey. Last month, we focused on the Fool card. This month, we are focusing on the first card in the deck, the Magician. All you need to do to become a part of those classes is become a paid subscriber to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your subscription will grant you access to each month's live classes, as well as all of the course materials that we may have had prior to that class. So if you missed our first class, never fear, it's all still there and available to you. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions in relation to anything that we are learning. And also, if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only do you get a discount on the full year's classes, but you also receive a free 1-hour mentorship reading with me, wherein we will assess where you are on your own tarot journey, and I will give you information on how to utilize the classes to your best advantage and anything that I feel will be necessary and helpful to your own personal coursework at that time. Thank you to everybody who's already joined us there. It's been fantastic so far, and I'm really, really looking forward to continuing forward with you guys in this way. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me there as well, just to stay abreast of any new opportunities, experiences, classes that we may be putting together. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and experiencing these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow.